And we are also joined in studio by actor Liam Cunningham, a very special guest to have in studio this week.
Thanks very much, sir. It's a delight to be here.
Yes. You have been in the headlines this week. You are lending your voice to a very important situation.
Yep.
Tell us about that.
I've just come back from Catania, Sicily, where we were seeing off a small boat called the Madeleine. And its mission is to leave with a hold full of humanitarian aid, and it's going to head to Gaza to try and break the blockade. Mm-hmm. And that's what we were doing for the last few days, and there was a lot of press there, and celebrations, and flag waving and protests, and these beautiful, full of humanity people who are on this boat are doing what the international community should be doing.
What's on board the vessel? I mean, people will see Greta Thunberg is, of course, probably the most prominent name on board. But in terms of actual aid on board,
there are the stuff that the IDF won't allow in: crutches. There are antibiotics, baby formula. I think there's morphine, because there's a lot of people in extraordinary pain, mostly medical. And there is also, which I find kind of heartbreaking, there is a 3D printed prosthetic baby's arm that they're bringing as well, and hoping their voyage won't be impeded.
On that topic of being impeded, you mentioned the blockade. Mm-hmm. At this point, in the abstract, what is the likelihood of your colleagues being able to land that flotilla?
Well, we have no idea, because if you're dealing with a sane government, there would be some predictability, and there would be some sort of diplomatic, at very least, conversation. But these people in power in Tel Aviv, we've seen what they can do. They've already, although they didn't admit it, who else could it be? They did destroy a boat, or damage it heavily in Malta, and they sent in 2 drones to take out the ship. So this is a replacement boat that unfortunately only takes 12, which is 4 crew and 8 volunteers. Basically anything can happen. There's already been threats. There's already been drones in the air at night time. So the intimidation has begun. But what they will do, the closer the guys get off the coast of Gaza, is anybody's guess.
I mean, it is a very brave endeavour in terms of the individuals who are travelling on the flotilla. You mentioned at the start there, though, it's something that governments should be doing. Well,
100% according to international law, and I've even thrown myself into having a look at what the Geneva Conventions require of a government. This is not suggestions. If there is a visible genocide, and our Taoiseach Micheál Martin used the word in government, and to use that word leads you down the path of necessary legal obligations. And one of them is that it's very specific. Even if it's not in your state, you are obliged legally to intervene in a genocide. And this legislation came on the back with the International Court of Justice and the ICC, on the back of the horrific Holocaust and genocide of the Jewish people in World War II. So legally, and I said this yesterday in an interview, we should be sending the Navy, our Navy, on a humanitarian mission to deliver this stuff. And if we don't do it, then it not only brings shame on ourselves, it brings a sense of destruction on the international rules-based order, which is we are responsible for. We are the caretakers of international law until it's handed on to the next generation, and it's falling apart in front of us. It's appalling.
It's clear to see that the public here is very much on board with this in terms of support for the Palestinian people. All of the polls we've seen in the papers, even over the last number of weekends, show that. The government has said they've done things like they've recognised the state of Palestine. They said they're pushing forward with the Occupied Territories Bill. Now, people will dispute how much impact that's going to have, particularly because services may not be included in that. But it is, when you put it like that, when you see international law and what it says, when you see wrong happening in terms of breaches of international human rights law, you have to intervene. It almost makes it difficult to understand for people out there. So why aren't we doing more? Why are we only doing this here and that here? I mean, is that what you think? That's where you think the public is at with this? Is that we're very good at saying that there's a problem there? Yeah. Ireland has been, as I described previously, one of the least worst countries in terms of speaking out about it.
Yeah.
But in terms of action, do you agree that we don't feel to be or seem to be able to get that next step forward in terms of sticking our necks out above the parapet?
The words aren't working. That's obvious because of the damage that we've seen to the Palestinian people since we've recognised Palestine, since Micheál Martin has said it's genocide. It's not enough. We need action. The time, but I'm not sick hearing the words and we're on the side of the oppressed and blah blah blah. If you do nothing, then the words mean nothing. So I prefer not to hear them talking about it at all, because that just reflects their actions. And we really need to step up. We're in a wonderful position. We're a small country. We're not militarily aligned with anybody. And we can be an honest broker, and especially from a country that suffered occupation for 700 years. We feel it. We know the game. We're also a country that it's very easy to look at it, that we suffered 2 genocides here. I mean, don't forget, and these are British establishment figures. When Oliver Cromwell was here for the 9 months he was here and left his new model army for an additional 3 years, the figures are from the British that 40% of our population was slaughtered. That was the first one. And you can be in no doubt, although we give it this magnificent romantic phrase, the Great Hunger, that was a genocide. I mean, they did the same thing in India. There was 50 ships a day leaving Ireland, filling the shops in England while our famine was going on, and they had this laissez-faire, let them get on with it, it's nothing to do with us. They were occupying our country. They were in charge of that, and we lost. The estimates are 1 million people, and 1.5 million or 2 million went, left the country. For Ireland not to have sympathy with the plight of the Palestinians would be the bizarrest thing on the planet if we weren't sympathetic at the very least.
Well, the government would say that it goes beyond, because of the government is not here to represent itself, so kind of relay its view, which would be that it's effectively, from a European standpoint, it's almost best in class, that it has recognised Palestinian statehood, that it has at least taken a cabinet decision to progress with a version of the Occupied Territories Bill, that it's one of the first governments to call for an outright suspension and a outright review of the trade association deal that's there between the European Union and Israel. You obviously don't feel that that's enough. The government would say that it's wedded to this kind of multilateral worldwide view of trying to move in concert and trying to bring the rest of the world along with it.
The one proviso that I believe is in the EU is that each country is responsible for its own foreign affairs, right? It's with trade and stuff like that, it's different. This is very much about foreign affairs with a country that is committing genocide. When you compare, to hold us up as a beacon in the EU, and yesterday and today, when the French dockers have impounded or thrown to one side 14 tons of munitions and machine gun parts or whatever they are going to Israel.
Reported by the ditch.
And then today they found more containers. So one of the leading lights of the EU is supplying arms to a genocidal regime. So to hold us up as a beacon when you've got that standard below us doesn't make us look too good.
Liam, what's your read on what's holding us back then from doing this? Well,
it's fear, obviously. But I mean, the Americans are incredibly powerful, and I'm sure there's been a few whispers in the ears of we'll take this away or we'll repatriate our large businesses or whatever it may be.
It's been reported. I mean, the ambassador said that to the Taoiseach last year, wasn't it? That this will impact 1,000 US companies if you go forward with the OTB.
Yeah. So the thing is, if you...
But the OTB is one thing, but what about, as you mentioned there, the Navy going out with aid?
Well, that would be a legal obligation. It's not a case of, let's go gung-ho and let's break this thing. If we don't do it, we're breaking international law. And because everybody else is not doing it, doesn't make it all right. We really look, that would be a huge step to do that. But the very least, we should stop doing business with a country that's committing genocide. I mean, this is not a big ask. And if you're putting a spreadsheet or the success of Q4 ahead of the dismemberment of children, then you're morally bankrupt. That's it.
On the aid situation, because obviously the flotilla is going to bring in a small amount of aid. That's the objective of this. While there are thousands and thousands of trucks currently sitting outside Gaza, not being permitted to go in. One of the things I've seen you be quite critical of over the last number of months has been news coverage of this the situation in Gaza, particularly around aid, it's been so noticeable to see Western news organisations, for example, with regards to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, as it's been described.
Yes, it's just disbanded, hasn't it? They've just cut it off.
They say that they're restoring the aid distribution, as they put it, to centres this evening there. But it's been interesting that there was all these headlines around the world of the blockade has been lifted. It's the end of the blockade. No. It certainly hasn't by anyone's measure. So, I mean, do you think that that's actually creating a level of distrust generally in Western media? Because if we can't call a spade in this country or in Britain or in the States, when everybody can see clearly what's happening in their own eyes, they can see what's being live streamed from Palestinians there as well, then what are we doing here as journalists?
We're bathing in fear. It's not a case of if we do something. What people are worried about here, and specifically in the government, is what are the repercussions if we do something. It's kicking the can down the road, and we've seen it with many of the difficult decisions that government, when they set up the community, whatever it is, those get-togethers to deal with the poison chalice, and it's one of those. It's dealing with the obfuscation. And I mean, for instance, what you were talking about, that Mossad funded, according to Dropsite News, I think they discovered that what are they called, GFD or something?
GHF,
Humanitarian Foundation, yes.
So they are there is a report that they have traced the money back to a Mossad operation.
And either way, it's Israeli sanctioned anyway, which goes against the general principles of how aid is
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, none of the aid agencies, including the UN, will have anything to do with it, because these people are totally inexperienced. There's been 460 shot at these centres, and they're calling them in. And when they called them in yesterday, the Israeli stated that those centres have now become combat zones. So anybody comes into them is going to be shot after beckoning them to get their limited aid there. So they can't be trusted. When
you're on the ground there and communication is difficult, then you don't know which centre you're going to, which is a target and which one is a safe zone.
Well, they were queuing because they were given the word that the centres were going to open up at 7 a.m, I think, or 8 a.m, and there was a huge amount of people at 3 a.m. So as soon as they opened, there was a huge rush. They panicked and just opened fire on unarmed people scrambling for food. We can't allow that to continue. It's shooting fish in a barrel, as the Americans used to say about it in Iraq.
Speaking of the flotilla itself, you were telling us on the way in that the original plan was for it to hopefully land on Sunday, or at least to make it to the Gaza coastline on Sunday. You were telling us that there's a bit of new development which might at least waylay that timetable.
Yes, I just had a call just before I came in. I was sitting in the car, and the wonderful Caoimhe Butterley, who's a huge part of the flotilla, she gave me a ring, and they got a distress call this morning from a sinking inflatable rib with migrants from Libya on it. They were the closest vessel. So under international law, it's their duty as a ship to go and rescue them. The rib was deflating rapidly to the extent that four or five of the occupants of the rib craft dived into the sea and had to be rescued by the Madeleine, the boat we've just been talking about. And they are now in possession of these unfortunate Sudanese who are trying to escape the madness of Libya. And they are now in a bit of a quandary about what to do with them. They want them picked up. They are also in very tense about if they do head for Crete to deliver these unfortunate migrants, that they may be impounded. The Greeks have a very, very questionable relationship with the Israelis at the moment. Okay. And they're worried that the ship might be impounded, but that's ongoing now.
You can't stop in Libya on the way back, because if that's where the Sudanese people have come from, you can't return to the same state they've come from.
If we handed them over to, because the Libyan Coast Guard was there, and they would return them to Libya, which for people seeking asylum is highly illegal under international law.
And is bringing them on their mission an option?
No, I shouldn't think so. I'm not sure they have the capability. The maximum they could keep on the boat with the amount of humanitarian aid was 8 volunteers. It's a small-ish.
Yeah, because we saw some of the overhead pictures. People might have actually seen them in our reports earlier in the week. Actually, some overhead drone footage as it was disembarking from Sicily.
Yes,
it is a relatively small boat.
Yes, it is, and we were buzzed just before they took off. A military helicopter came down incredibly low into where people were bathing in the harbour and stuff, and and basically buzzed the boat just before they came in, just to let them know we were being watched. I mean, how juvenile can you get? It's pathetic.
Just by people like yourself and by Greta Thunberg taking part in this, obviously it does help to get word out about these situations when you do have high-profile people putting themselves forward like this. I've seen people have been very critical of Greta Thunberg, a young woman, of course, who has, put herself and put the planet first in many ways before.
100%.
Have you faced any repercussions from your stance on Gaza?
No. You know what's funny? And I completely understand the question, especially because I do a fair bit of work with companies from the States. It really is. The king is only the king as long as the people think he's the king. And if anybody has put me on a list because they don't like my humanitarian approach to our beautiful species, they're not people I want to work with anyway. So, and I've said this before, whatever shadowy list that I might be on, or some of my fellow mouthy people might be on, the list that I have is a hell of a lot longer than the list I might be on.
Yeah, so no impediment to work at this point.
There's no the only impediment is to work with people I didn't want to work with in the first place. That's fine.
It's a good position to be in, isn't it? Yeah.
I think it's good. Stand by your principles, Liam.
You got to.
Yeah.
Taking this forward, I mean, because this has been something which is ongoing. It's now in a real deep humanitarian crisis at this point in time. 600 trucks a day need to get in. I think the last reckoning by the International Red Cross was that 600 boxes at a max were actually getting into Gaza. 2 million people starving.
And the 5 trucks,
exactly.
I just put the hair up on the back of my neck. The 5 trucks that got in after Israel broke the ceasefire, 2 of those trucks had death shrouds in them. That was all that was delivered of those 5 trucks. The 2 of them were I think, a Saudi Arabian gift, and they were shrouds for the dead.
But we're all sitting here and we're all watching this. I actually spoke with Mary Robinson about this recently, that she worries about the mental health aspect on us, which is almost a luxury to be in a position where we can worry about that.
Yes.
But you look at the situation that is unfolding before our eyes on a daily basis, where you're seeing a people being starved on a daily basis, kids dying of malnutrition, literally starving in the streets at this point in time. How do you think we're all going to look back at this period in the world's history when there's so much enormous wealth, there's so much, we talk the talk in terms of international human rights and with regards to the West being a leader, and we respect international law, all of these things, and yet here we all are going back to October of 2023 and we've let this happen.
Yes, we haven't. The impunity has been going on forever. So the reason they're doing it is because they weren't slapped on the wrist for doing it before with Operation Cast Lead, with all the various batterings that Gaza has had, and let's not forget about the West Bank. What's going on there? And even in my profession, the guy who just won the Oscar, his village has been razed to the ground. And there's an Irish woman in her 70 years old is in detention at the minute. I'd like to know what our government is doing about getting her. And very interesting that Israel holds the deportation meetings. You know where they hold them? At the airport. Like, you're going to win that case, aren't you? That's where the deportation cases are held. At the airport.
Yeah, but how do you think this is going to be looked back at this period?
It's a shameful period. It's going to be a shameful period. And as I've said before, one of the things that's important, I mean, my kids are grown up now and they are very much about the haters of injustice. I should hope I battered that into them. But I am not having my grandkids growing up and when they're reading about this saying, what did you do during there? At least I can throw my social media at them and stuff like this and say, oh, look, I did what I could. I roared about it. I tried to get more people to speak. It's the people who are saying nothing. Have you got your answers ready for your kids or your grandkids when they're hitting secondary school and they're reading about this? And as I said before, in World War II, you could say, we didn't know about the Holocaust. We didn't. The vast majority of us. This genocide is in 4K on your telly. And your only answer, you're not going to be able to say, I didn't know. The only answer you're going to be able to give to your kids is, I didn't care. And that is not, is that something you want your kid to think of you? That you did nothing when that was happening? I'm not prepared to give that answer to my kids or grandkids.
For Irish people who have spoken out, I just saw a column in The Spectator of all places today by Brendan O'Neill. Ireland has been consumed by hatred of Israel. He says a new religion blights the Republic of Ireland. Catholicism has been supplanted by a far more cultish creed. He goes on to say its name is Israel-phobia. He says he knew Ireland was hostile to Israel, but I had no idea how bad things had got. Everywhere you go, he says, you see the swirling animus for the state. The political class speaks of little else. The media are fervently obsessed. The cry goes out that Israel is evil. It's inescapable. He says it's all over Dublin, along a hotbed of leftish activism, he says. I'm not sure if I'd agree with that necessarily. But this targeting of Ireland internationally, whether it be by the British media or American media, we've seen it on Fox and Friends where they described Micheál Martin as a socialist and very left. This is something which is, is being described and it has been thrown around at Irish people for speaking out about humanitarian issues in Gaza. I mean, what do you make about the way that Ireland has been targeted? Michael D. Higgins, says that it has been a slander effectively on our nation.
It's absolutely right. But listen, it's bully boy tactics. And most of the people you quote there and the people in the States, you have to remember they're to the right of Attila the Hun. They have no credibility at all. I mean, anybody in the States, in the political system over there, has completely lost any right to speak about a healthy political system. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, the J1 visas, the students have all been told, scrape your social media, go in. This is like, McCarthyism is back in the States. So anything any of these people say is not worth the bribery check it's written on.